If you grew up in the Miami Valley, you probably remember the story of Erica Baker. The 9-year-old Kettering girl went missing on February 7th, 1999 and has never been found since. And it's been almost 24 years since her disappearance, and detectives are still working the case. Joining me right now is one of those detectives, retired detective Bob Green from the Kettering Police Department. And Bob, your life has been this case for the last 2 decades. You know, and you've been part of this podcast we've been doing, Missing Erica Baker. It's been out for the last couple of months. What has your experience been like in this podcast with us? And then what has this podcast done for the case?
The podcast itself is my experience. It was outstanding. I listened to the podcast. The way that you guys laid it out was incredible. I've had several family members, friends listen to it, same. What it's done is because of your work in looking into this investigation, it was like another set of eyes with detectives. And we developed a lead. It was through your producer who called me, talked to me about an area. We've since gone out and looked at that area. We're not done with that area yet. We were in the middle of the woods and we dug deep enough and found a buried dog. And we thought at that point we might have found Erica, but it turned out it wasn't. But it's been phenomenal because tips still come in. And that's because you guys took the time to get it out in the open.
Now, how unusual is that for a case like this? I mean, it has almost been 24 years since her disappearance. For people to still have this much interest in it, how unusual is that, and why do you think people are so invested in Erica's story?
I think everyone, when this case hit, it was amazing to see how the community, not just Kettering did an outstanding job, from the government all the way down to the residents. They just did an awesome job. But outside communities also just fell right in. I just think they have adopted her. You know, I told myself it was February 8th, it was the day after, and I told myself I wasn't going to let it go cold. And our police department has the Kettering Police Department has totally backed that philosophy up. And many individuals at that police department are to be applauded for their not letting it go. It wasn't just Bob Green. It's been a team effort. It's been a community effort.
Yeah, you know, we've talked with Detective Vincent Mason. There's a new detective on the case as well at Kettering Police. A lot of eyes have been on this case over the year, and as you have mentioned, you know, the entire Miami Valley in some ways has adopted Erica. You know, for your instance, you have a daughter that's not far off from her age, correct?
That's correct.
I mean, as a dad, having a daughter that age and handling this case at the same time and seeing what happened to Erica, did that bring you a lot of anxiety as a parent, not just as a detective?
Well, it brought my kids a lot of anxiety because I kept an eye on them. Yes, it really did. It affected our home life. I learned a lot about, you know, being more observant on what your kids are doing, where they're at, and when they're at, and that went to them growing up and moving out of the house and going to college and then moving on to their own, both of them. But yeah, it affected my life. It affected their life, not just in the end of, okay, mom and dad are more observant and constantly watching, but they had many times when I wasn't there, you know, or we would be out Christmas shopping. I told you that. You know, there was like 6 years in a row where my wife and I would be out Christmas shopping and we'd have to leave because of the case. But there were many times where I couldn't attend something because I was conducting a search or part of the investigation.
You know, I remember when this case broke because I am roughly the same age as Erica as well. I remember my parents holding me closer as well. We talked to Erica's childhood best friend in the podcast, and she said that her childhood was completely changed. Do you think that Erica's case in the Miami Valley was a turning point for public safety and I guess how parents treated stranger danger?
I think yes, I think it opened a lot of people's eyes, and I think that they unfortunately, she gets credit for that, and it's a sad thing. And I also feel that, her grandmother has been very active with the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children and everything, and it did change a lot of what people think, that because things like that don't happen in Kettering, but yet it did.
Let's talk a little bit about your history as an investigator. You were pretty fresh into the police business when you had got handed this case.
I had been a police officer for 10 years. I'd been a detective for 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, as a detective, 4 months, when somebody says, this is your case, probably the biggest case Kettering has seen in decades, what goes through your mind at that point? And I guess, how do you wrap your mind around the task at hand?
What went through my mind when I was finally told, that it was mine, was terror. Terror, and then just not wanting to fail. Then I knew that I had to rely on many, many others, experienced people, whether they were investigators, whether they were searchers. I had to rely on their expertise because I didn't have it. And I had to ask questions. And I've always said this from day one. This case was not my case. It was everyone's case. And this was an example of, especially the Kettering Police Department, because that's where I was at, as the most incredible team effort by everyone at that organization. Their family members put up with a lot, because I wasn't the only one being called out or working 16 hours a day. Every single detective back there was doing that, and everyone came together. When you work in an organization, you have conflict. That was all pushed aside, and everyone let it go just to work this case.
I know there were a lot of different investigators involved in whether it be giving polygraphs or doing interviews with some of the witnesses to last seeing Erica alive. Now, let's talk about when you were handed the case. How did you zero in on the main suspect, Christian Gabriel, as the guy that you guys believe was the person who hit Erica with his van and got rid of her body?
We were sent to investigators from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. They reviewed the case, and one of the things that they wanted to do was check a subject out that had ties in Columbus. We had gone up there, the three of us had gone up there, and we were on our way back when I received a call from my sergeant at the time, and he told me, we've got a guy by the name of Clifford Butts, and he is in, I forget what prison it was, but he's in this prison, and he has something to tell you. So the reason that we latched on to Christian Gabriel was because of Clifford Butts. He told us where that, he started that story.
When you have a case like this, is that pretty common for somebody wanting to get something off of their chest and, I guess, tell police and kind of get that first domino going?
Well, you can say things about people in prison, convicts. The majority of the people that are in prison will not condone anything happening to a child. And I think that had something to do with it, because a child was injured and hurt, or in this case, missing. And I interviewed several people from prisons in this case, and that was a common thread. You just don't mess with kids.
Well, I mean, and you talk about dealing with cons, and then also people who are known to be crackheads as well. How do you trust somebody's word when they're, known for breaking the law, known for being on drugs most of the time?
Now, you verify first. When we got the initial story on Gabriel, we then went to verify. We then checked Gabriel's ownerships of vehicles. We found the van. The van had been sold and towed because it had been in an accident. It was still at the tow yard. So you work to verify what you hear. You can't just trust it. You have to verify these things.
Now, we know you guys interviewed Gabriel first, did a polygraph with him, and the polygraph proved that he had lied. Now, I just learned this today that you are trained in polygraph.
Yes.
How does that process work for people at home who are not familiar with the polygraph process? And then how do you guys end up determining whether or not somebody is telling the truth in an instance like this?
Well, the polygraphist is going to get all the case facts, and he or she are going to develop their questions, and the questions are paramount. What we're going to ask the person in which we're polygraphing. When they develop those questions, it's a very long process. The tests themselves don't take long. It's preparation, it's explaining everything to the person which is being polygraphed, making sure they understand, making sure that it's voluntary. And we did all that. We did it with Chris. Once the main tests are done, we then review the charts. And it takes the average examiner to review the charts within 10 minutes. And he was confronted with those charts.
If somebody knows they're lying, why do they do this?
There's a couple reasons for that. One, they think they can beat it.
Yeah.
Okay. And two, they want to get something off their chest. And it's interesting in the polygraph field. We have a 50% no-show rate for criminal exams. And that's people that say to the detective, yeah, I'll take your test, but then they don't show up when they're scheduled. But a lot of times, either people think they can beat it or they really want to get something off their chest.
Over the years, as you investigated this case, Christian Gabriel changed his story a number of times, little details here and there. But eventually, he did confess to hitting Erica with his van. But the big key to this case is that he's never accurately told you where Erica is. Why do you think we still don't know where Erica's body's at?
I think it's a case of him. I don't believe, me personally, I don't believe that Erica died as a result of the car accident. I think that she died later. And that puts a whole different spin on charges. In the state of Ohio, if there's a murder charge, it will not be, there's no statute of limitations. Other charges, there are statute of limitations. And I think he's concerned that if we find her remains, we will find evidence in which she died, that she was killed and not died as a result of the accident.
So he ended up spending 6 years in prison on, what was it? It was involuntary manslaughter?
No,
it was abuse of the corpse.
And tampering with
evidence.
Yes.
Was that discouraging at that point to know that your guy that you spent so long finding only spent 6 years behind bars, and now he's living probably somewhere out west, is from what our information tells us is his current whereabouts?
I have to separate myself on what the legislator decides on penalty of crimes and everything, and what I can prove and can't prove. If I can't prove a homicide, a vehicular homicide, but yet I'm able to prove tampering with evidence and gross abuse of the corpse, which the prosecutors did an outstanding job on, then I have to settle that, and I can't get mixed up with that.
Yeah, but you're human. I mean, you got to be a little disappointed a little bit.
You're disappointed, but I think at this point, my main disappointment is the family doesn't have anywhere to go to see Erica rest in peace. And that's my main focus now.
Yeah, I want to talk about the family now. We had a chance to talk with Misty and Greg Baker, Erica's parents, also Pam Schmidt, her grandmother. She's a feisty one. I love Grandma. She's great. And what I find so striking about this is how they have clinged on to hope after all these years. In your experience working with other victims' families, how do the Bakers compare with the resiliency?
I think that they have done an outstanding job, and they have clinged on to the hope. I think that the trial of the tampering and the gross abuse of the corpse helped them some. I don't know that they'll ever get closure, even when we find Erica, but I think that helped them for answers. But I think it's great that they have continued their lives. They have worked to better their lives, and it's been a long struggle for them.
What I thought was kind of interesting is when we were out searching that new location that we were talking about a little bit earlier, is, you know, we had asked you if you had reached out to Greg or Misty yet, and then you said no. Explain why, you know, after all these years, you don't call the family in an instance like this. Is it you don't want to get their hopes up? I mean, you've done this so many times.
Right. I feel it's my job to ride the roller coaster, and I don't want to put them through it. And I will take the ups and downs, and when there's ups, there's good things, I will let them know, but I don't want them to be involved in the roadblocks, the walls that we've ran into, the disappointments, because they've had the ultimate disappointment, and every time they get a new one, they just they relive the old disappointment. And I want to be that buffer, and the Kettering Police Department wants to be that buffer.
You think about their emotional well-being.
Yes.
Talking to me right now. How badly do you want to be able to give them good news for once?
It would be the ultimate, my career, and I've had a great career. But to bring her back and to have her rest at her site, because the family already has her headstone set, and to do that, that would be the ultimate, my career.
You get emotional talking about this. I noticed when we were out at the search, and we had found the bones at first. They ended up being dog bones, of course. But I got a vibe from you as you were sitting over the hole in just a moment, taking a breath, that you almost were like how you are right now. Did you have a glimmer of hope that maybe in that moment we actually did find something?
Yeah, I saw that on the news, and yes, I did. I was floored. And then I had to kick in my protective shield and not, you know, and to hold it together until we could verify. But I couldn't believe what went down that day when we found the dog bones.
I mean,
that was the closest.
That's got to be so hard, is pushing those feelings back down inside.
Yes.
I mean, how have you managed? How have you coped with that? I mean, I'm sure your wife is there and like, you know, Bob, sometimes you got to let it out.
Right. And you know, I contribute my success to her. And she has been an incredible cop's wife. And she's always there. And I think that's my big outlet, is that I know I can go to her and emotionally release. And she's there for me.
That's great. I mean, I know my wife is there for me when I need her, and they're incredible women.
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about where we go moving forward. Obviously, coming up in February, 24 years since her disappearance. We have that location we searched. We had some dogs out that marked a couple spots. What do the future searches look like out there, and what can we expect?
We need to look into those spots, and EquiSearch is going to help us with that. So we will be back out there, and we will be bringing you along because you have a vested interest in this. We will follow that one up, clear it. If we're successful, we'll move on the way we're supposed to move on. If it's not successful, as leads come in, we will continue to follow them.
Now, Bob, I don't want this to sound like I'm calling you old, but Father Time is ticking.
Yes.
You are getting older. And as this case continues to get older, do you feel like there's more urgency to search more places, to get more tips? I mean, How does that make you feel as time continues to pass?
I'm ready for whatever. I'm worried. I understand that. When I do eventually retire from my position now, I'm still a phone call away, and I will be there. It's something that I need to complete, and might be there in a walker, but I'm not going to give up. And I made that promise to her internally on the 8th, the day after.
Well, Bob, I appreciate your positive outlook on this entire situation. I know it's been tough for you over the years, but it seems like you've been able to keep the hope, just like the family. And that's great. Of course, you can download Missing Erica Baker right now on all podcast providers. And download the episodes. You'll hear Bob on there, other detectives, the family, and of course, newfound evidence in this case, and more about that search as well. Detective Bob Green, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all you guys have done.
Hey, thank you.